Hello! This video is about Sister of the Thorn and her walls, specifically her talent Ironbark thicket. I personally have never done such types of videos before, but lately I just felt like I had to. I know that most people don't use that ability because they feel like it's either underwhelming, useless or straight up awful, but I promise you that it's not always at least. Like most things in this game, walls just have certain unspoken aspects and advantages to them, many of which are not that obvious, and so in this video I wanted to show them, because in my opinion it's one of the coolest and interesting abilities in the game, that sadly gets mostly hated by players. The reason for that is that it's the only ability in the game that can actually harm you or your team if you use it incorrectly. If you use other abilities in the way that doesn't benefit you, then you just waste your ultimate. You don't lose anything except your purple bar and just need to wait for it to recharge and try again. No harm is done. With this ability, if you misplace the wall, it can actually screw you or your teammates over. Yes, it can block their shots, their melee attacks, their line of sight, and so not only waste your ult, but also make the situation much worse. And that's okay. That's part of what makes it so unique and interesting. Remember that it can only do harm if you place it badly. It doesn't always cause harm. You just have to learn when and where it should and shouldn't be used. And that's what makes it so unique. You're in the possession of a physical object that can be placed in various ways, and that can affect, whether in a good or bad way, all of the enemies and players on your screen. And so often we hear or see something bad happening because of a badly placed wall, but what about the cases where it can be used for good? I don't see people talking about those situations, which seriously affects the perk's reputation. So now I'll at least try to show you the potential behind the walls and talk about all the details, aspects, way to use it, and even glitches related to the walls that I know for today. And I just hope that you give it another chance and just try to have more experiences with it. In future you'll get much better results and will have fun with it. If you don't play Sister of the Thorn and have hard time dealing with badly placed walls, I have also some advices for you later in the video, but now let's finally get to the advantages of the walls. Let's start with probably the most unique one and not that known fact: ability to stop tornadoes. The benefits of it are obvious. If you couldn't have a line of sight on Blightstormer, either because he has already started casting on someone else beyond your reach, or you just had no time to get him because of fighting other enemies, here's what you can do to really save the day. The tornado thinks of the leaf wall, as any other enemy in the game with its own AI, as a physical obstacle that it can't pass through, so it has to either wait for it to come down or find an alternative path to get around it. Right there you can see how the tornado tries to reach us, but it just can't find a better way to do this, and we just can wait it out safely while dealing with other enemies and not being afraid that we need to move. Now let's talk about something much more commonly used: ability to split up hordes. Sometimes when the wave is really dense, you don't have enough cleave and want no more enemies to get into that horde, you can split it. Or sometimes when you are not sure about the direction that the enemies are going to come from and don't want the enemies to have multiple paths to your location, walls can also help you out. Here you can see how the horde starts to surround us because enemies are coming from both sides. I cover up one side, go to the other to deal with enemies and not being afraid that other enemies might come from the back because I covered it up. And after dealing with those, I can get back to those and deal with them. In the previous example the horde was not that dense, but here you can actually see how useful that can be. The enemies again start to surround us. I know that they are coming from the back, so even though at first it seems like the wall is badly placed because it prevents Victor from doing anything, actually I saved him because the enemies start to come in to him from the back and he didn't get surrounded because of the first wall. Now I place the second one and can just deal with enemies compiled now in one spot with grenade. Now, stopping the boss. When you need to fight a horde while the boss is coming right at you, walls can be a lifesaver. Not only a goodly placed wall will not let any enemies through, but you also don't have to waste your own time dealing with that horde and can damage the boss in the meantime. Here's also an interesting example of how you can switch when to block a boss or a horde behind him. So at first I covered a horde behind him, then he aggroed on me. Now I block the boss for him to not come at me and deal with enemies behind. And after I see that the boss is already aggroing at my teammates, I now again cover the horde and go back to boss. So you can just use walls to manipulate the fight and choose targets that you need to attack with now. Here's also an interesting example how Sienna is aggroing the boss and taking him far away. So I cover him up to aggro him at me. And now Diana can safely deal him much more damage than I do, while I still debuffing him and he's not going for her. There is also a similar example how I try to aggro the boss, and now I place a wall so he cannot reach me. He can still hit through the wall, so be careful, but he cannot go directly to me. He's standing in one place and trying to hit it. And now my team can just safely deal with him while he's already also debuffed. Now, one of my absolute favorite. Stopping the patrol to kill it in a single bomb. If you get the patrol to follow you and then you put up a wall in front of them, you can still beat them up and in a very safe way. That is, of course, if you have a grenade or a button with a torpedo. The splash damage of the grenade goes through the wall flawlessly, and since rats hitting the wall stand in one spot directly in each other, you can always hit the entire patrol in only one throw. So you can see how they all stacked up together in very close to each other, so the splash damage of the grenade always goes directly through all the enemies behind the wall. Can be very useful, you can just hit them all with one throw. Here I play with my friend, he plays as a Bardin with torpedo. You can see how he can just spam the torpedo in the wall, not being afraid of getting hit from behind, having enough time to reload, because not only the walls cover him up, I can also save him. And he can just deal with the entire patrol, just standing behind the wall and just spamming right into it. So you can still do damage through walls with splash damage of explosions. And here's another great example. I know that the horde is coming from this way. I just block it in that little square, and later my friend throws a grenade and kills the entire horde in simply one grenade, because they all are stacked up together behind those walls. Here you can also see how that works against bosses. Similar thing goes to Sienna and her coruscation staff. A very useful thing. You can just cover up a boss, a patrol, a horde, and she can just burn them all in a mere seconds, not being afraid that they'll surround her, because they all just stand in one spot that you can just burn up. You see how they just die instantly and with no danger whatsoever for both of us. You can basically do the same thing without Sienna if you have a lamp oil nearby. Just explode the barrel and just see how they all burn behind the wall and can't do anything to you. Now let's talk more about hitting through the wall, because there are quite a few things to say about it. Firstly, you can still damage enemies behind the walls with weapons that have infinite cleave, again torpedo, coruscation staff, grenades, but also warrior priest's ultimate, Sienna's fire sword and such. The walls also block your crushing and non-infinite cleaving attacks, but they do not block your piercing attacks or pushes. For example here, first a little funny thing, if the enemy is going right through the wall, you can still damage him because he just sticks out, like here I did with my staff. And now I can push through the wall, so I'm gonna show again. So first I restore stamina, they are all stacked up behind, and I can still push them from the wall lift up enemy and then deal with them, so still kinda useful. When you see like an entirely useless wall, you just think like, oh, that stupid elf again blocking my side view, you can still do something, so you can still try to make the most of the situation. Here I also noticed how the bot Sienna also can damage and fire up enemies from behind the wall. And here you can see how first attack of the Grail Knight doesn't come through, but the piercing one does. So again, piercing attacks can still damage enemies. Not that useful, but again, if you really need to kill someone behind the wall, you can do some things. And here also a specific example for Chaos Warriors. Because of their animation, you see how they hit the wall. So first I just clear up all the enemies to have only Chaos Warriors. And now, since they do this kind of animation, I can still just lift them up with the staff or just throw something at them while they cannot reach me. So it's still pretty useful against Chaos Warriors or patrols who can sometimes just do something to the enemies behind the wall if they stick out. And let's again return to that one example. You can see how bosses, most of the bosses can still hit you through the wall because of their size and their attacks, but they still cannot reach you. Wall is stopping them from going directly to you, so even though they have these wide attacks, you can still just hold them in one spot and deal with them safely. Now, another use. Blocking off rattling gunners, same as tornadoes. If you had no time or line of sight to firstly get to the special, or if you just didn't have time to switch your weapons, you can now at least be safe behind the wall to wait him out safely and kill him after he's done firing. It can also stop projectiles of the boss of Skinner Gate. Also here notice how I press M1 to change the direction of the wall, pretty useful thing, don't forget that you can do it to place walls in a more comfortable way. And here a very nice example, I literally cannot see the enemy because of the gas cloud, so I just create the leaf wall to crouch and wait out his firing line and then kill him after that. And walls also stop the flies at various maps. And yet another use, ability to get someone from the ground and do it in a completely safe way. Nothing much to say, you see a person laying down, you want to get him safely. Just create a little room for him to get up and not get hit by an upcoming enemy or an arrow or a rattling projectile or other things. And not only that, if you have a medkit, or you need to reload, or you need to drink a potion, or other things, after picking up your friend, you still have enough time to do various things, like prepare a bomb, or you can heal, recover just stamina, so pretty useful. Essentially giving you the ability to cover you and your team from an upcoming danger when you need more time to do certain things. Now, one of my favorites, dealing with certain ending sequences. Endings to some levels can be quite challenging, and walls can help you greatly to make them much easier. For example, here, on Atelier Louis, you don't need to rely on someone to cover your back while you turn the levers. You can cover your own back, literally, and have more than enough time to do the part of the puzzle all by yourself, not worrying about the dangers. And also an interesting thing, when at the end here all the enemies are going to be dead in 20 to 30 seconds, you can just go in one of those little rooms and cover up yourself with wall, just wait for all the enemies to die out without any risks or danger for yourself. Here sadly my team did not follow me, but usually you can just all together hop right in there and be in complete safety. Here you see the same thing works at Righteous Stand. Or sometimes when you need to run as fast as you can to the end, while enemies chase you, you can just lock them behind and go right to the end safely.
Just make a break for it, you can do it!
Clutch.
Ooh, that was close.
If I could add one thing to the game, personally, what would it be? Steam tank drive assault fire. It's easy.
And here is a similar example. My teammates sadly died, and I wasn't able to save them. The enemies were just everywhere, and here honestly I did a mistake. I was able to save my teammate with the first wall, but I did not realize it, and then it was too late. So yeah, you can see my mistake, but you can also see the steel walls helped me to get out, to wait out for the boat to arrive, and not to deal with the danger. And well, overall the ability to get more time. Basically in any situation you can use walls to give yourself extra time to do things even when you're surrounded. You can recover stamina, reload spears or vent your staff, heal with a medkit, drink a potion, prepare to throw a grenade, and do most of these actions in a duration of one wall. Now, let's talk about the walls as a tool of social interaction and look at the reasons of why it's so unpopular or even hated by many in the community. Now, I won't say that everyone who doesn't like the wall as ability is wrong and should love it immediately. No, it's everyone's personal preference, and some people just may dislike the mechanic of the wall, but I've noticed that most players usually dislike it or just find it useless or boring because of a couple bad experiences with it, and not because of the ability itself being very bad. At first, with no knowledge of all the mechanics of walls and different ways to use it, that we already covered in the video, people tend to do a lot of mistakes. And it's okay. Making mistakes means learning how the ability works. Surely a badly placed wall can sometimes feel underwhelming, annoying and useless, but both the sisters of the Thorn and her teammates shouldn't let little annoyances like that to negate all the good things that this ability can do. The perk itself isn't awful, nor the person that placed it badly is always dumb or always had bad intentions. It's just that it's the only ability in the game that can truly punish you in various ways if you're not careful enough. But that's also part of what makes it so unique and therefore interesting. Of course, if the wall is really badly placed, or to say better, has no meaning besides being annoying, then yeah, sometimes you just need to wait it out and ask your elf not to create them in such a way that brings no utility to anyone in the team whatsoever. However, sometimes things get tricky. For example, here's an interesting situation. Sometimes placement of a wall can seem both good and bad, depending on the perspective. Like here, I placed a wall. My idea was to create it to immediately stop the incoming shielded enemies and firstly help Kruber and Zaldspire in the back, to then come back to the enemies and deal with them. However, for some reason I was also certain that Bardin here would go through the Grim, and I didn't even think about him taking the enemies on himself. Only after placing the wall, I noticed that Bardin wanted to take out the enemies by himself and not go for the book. However, the wall was already placed, and it was kind of an obstacle to him. So, in my eyes, I did everything right and made use of the ability. In his eyes, it was kind of a useless time wasting obstacle. Situations like that may occur from time to time no matter the skill level of Sister of the Thorn. Lack of communication and different approaches to situations that vary between players on the team will always lead to that. As a Sister of the Thorn player, as always, you should be extra careful and think twice about how your walls can affect everyone on your team. If you don't have a situation when the wall is truly needed, you can just go without it to avoid situations like that. As for the others, the best thing you can do in these situations is adapting. When the wall is placed inconveniently for you, you can still try to make use of the situation. Many times players would just stare at the wall, waiting for it to go down, while getting angry both at the elf and her wall, When here, for example, Bardin, instead of waiting the wall out, could have just gone for the book as he originally intended to. And now let's take a look at some of the glitches that I learned to avoid during my time of playing with staff and walls. First one, all the lords pass through the walls. Don't try to block them, they will just ignore the walls completely, and you will only screw over your teammates, so here you shouldn't rely on them. Walls also do not stop these weird jelly ghosts, so beware and don't rely on them. And another thing, not even a glitch, but just a weird mechanic. So with staff or with walls you can block or disable the banner beasts before they place their banners, so you could more easily kill them. But here, specifically at the ending of Bad Omens, these exact banner beasts are unkillable until they place their banners down. So do not try to block them, to leave them up, to stop them in any way possible before they place their banners, because you just cannot do any harm to them until they place them. So just an advice. Do not try to stop him, it will just only slow you and your team down. Another one, pretty weird. At some spots, like bridges or water, you just cannot place walls. The sister will only clap her hands and you'll just do nothing, so mind that and do not try to rely on those in these specific spots, because you can just expect a wall to arrive, but it doesn't and you just get hit, so mind that.
I sense a gunner waiting in ambush.
And the final glitch, very dangerous and very annoying, but also pretty rare. For some reason, when you throw firebomb to the enemies behind the wall, they can start to go through it. They just lose their collisions to the wall and just go directly to you. It doesn't work always, and if it does work, then it always caused only by firebombs. Regular explosions do not cause this glitch, but for some reason it is there, and sometimes, like, the whole patrol can just start to go through the wall right at you. So that is all about the walls. I very much hope that you can give it another chance and try it out. I don't expect you to immediately love it, and maybe you'll still think of it as a meh ability, but at least you can just try it again. But now what I'd like to talk about is the staff. I also see very little use of the staff. Most sisters that I see in public games are using the javelins, and it's cool. I also like it, but I just prefer the staff. And I know that many people do not like staff because they think that it's boring. It kinda immediately deletes all the dangerous and therefore fun parts of the game, but I've also seen enough people like it, and I'm just curious, why do I practically never see anyone running it? And I just think maybe people just don't know the reliable way to use the stuff. So as you've probably noticed in these clips, I vent constantly. I can just lift everyone up and never think about overcharging, because I'm not afraid to use my health as a resource. That is because Sister of Thorn never has any issues with her health. Her teammates give her temporary health, she has a large health pool, she has the buff to get more health, and with Natural Bond that is applied by that passive, she just can heal herself in such a speed that you can basically never run out of health, even if you use it constantly to vent. So that makes it such a unique and such a incredibly powerful ability that I'm just really curious as to why people don't really use it that much. And now finally I just want to say thank you for watching the video. I hope that it was useful for you, that you've learned something new. I'm also very sorry for my accent. I hope that you did it to the end of the video and wasn't really bothered by it. I just hope that I can see more people that play Sister of the Thorn play like I do, because I really enjoy that playstyle and I rarely see people play like that. So hope to see you in my future games and good luck!